This is John Frehse for another episode of No Suits, No Slides. I'm here with Bill Beach, the recent retiree from a 4-year term as the Commissioner of Statistics for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the, as usual, infamous
David Gilbertson with UKG.
And we are very excited to have Bill Beach with us for a second installment with him. He's our first guest ever, and we're not letting him leave. We've locked the door. And we would love to hear from him on what happened when the pandemic hit, and he was looking at running the Bureau of Labor Statistics and trying to gather information and make sense of all this, because we were trying to make sense of it without all the data that you have.
Maybe before you answer, let's set the stage just a little bit. Right? I think
little stage setting.
Everybody knows what happened around March 16th, right? It's just everybody knows that.
I was in DC, by the way, on March 16th.
I heard that.
I was here. And the 17th.
What the three of us in the room know, but maybe not everybody in the country knows, is when everybody maybe lost their jobs, but maybe didn't, right? A lot of people weren't honestly sure if they lost their jobs or not. They all went to their local unemployment office, and the state unemployment offices were not ready. Their systems weren't ready. Everything was unprepared for something this unprecedented. And then 2 weeks later, and that all happened the week that the monthly jobs report survey is out in market, right? It's all that week.
Sure.
2 weeks later, you are expected to determine exactly how many jobs were lost at a time when nobody was working.
Bill, tell us what happened. What's the number, man?
So
What's
the context that I'm fascinated by. Yeah. And so with that as a lead-in, please help us get into your shoes.
I mean, we can see he didn't die. He's still here. He did not have a heart attack.
I didn't die.
And what you and your team went through during that time period.
Well, let me set the table a little bit.
Yeah, please.
So the mission that we had, that BLS has, is to produce gold standard statistics in prices, labor, working conditions, productivity. We have to do that, and we do that largely by going out into the world, talking to people in businesses and households about their labor conditions, or what they're buying or what they're selling, that kind of thing. So it has to do with this sort of contact.
Yeah.
We got 6 regional offices, 1,000 people in the field, 2,000 people back at the home office in Washington. And I noticed in late February that the flu was getting pretty bad in Seattle. We keep tabs on the health and well-being of the field offices and the people who go out. We didn't have a central office, but we had a big field office there because that was one of the areas where we surveyed for prices. Boy, the flu just got worse and worse and worse. And so I said, maybe we ought to ask those people to stay home. And then all of a sudden the flu got bad in New York. And then Boston. And then in early March, I asked my team to put together a tabletop exercise to see whether or not we could function if we had to pull everybody in from the field, because this flu or whatever it is getting really bad, spreading quickly everywhere.
Sure.
We'd heard the word pandemic at that point. We had no idea what it was. It wasn't called COVID-19 until early March, or maybe late February, but I didn't know it. We had the tabletop exercise, and then on the 13th, I made the call. I said, we've got to bring everybody in, but we still have to produce all of our reports.
And the 13th, that was the week that your survey was out in market.
It was in market. So we go to, so on the household survey and on the payroll survey, both are taken where the 12th of the month is a work day. Okay, so then payrolls are for the house, for the so forth and so on. So it's right in that time period right there. So it was really, it was amazing. So we shut it down. I just said, health, this is more important than getting the damn reports out. And we had no way of embargoing our reports. We had, there's laws that are big laws about how to protect the privacy of the data.
Sure.
None of that, these things move markets. You can't have any leaks. And we had a physical process of moving the report physically around the Postal Square building, which is headquarters. No way of doing that. Everybody's at home. They're not in their offices.
Oh, interesting.
We had 400 contractors in the field who no longer could use their desktop computers, and we had not issued them laptops. We found laptops, but we couldn't find power cords. And so, we
U.S. government, right? I'm just double checking.
US government. So we found all these these laptops in closets all across the country that we should have been turning in over the years, but failed to do apparently. GSA's record keeping is that bad, but they didn't have power cords.
So stealing from the government worked out.
This time it was in our favor.
So by the end of the month, we've completed the survey. It looks like it's going to hold up. Response rate wasn't that bad, but whether or not the quality of the responses was anything was up.
Sure.
So we produced the March report was produced on April 4th, and showed a jump of unemployment from 3.5%, which was the February number, to 4.3%, which was the March number. We missed the unemployment rate for March by maybe as much as 300 basis points.
Wow.
Yeah.
We may have talked about that once.
Yeah.
We may have talked about it.
Assumption that we were a little bit off.
because the survey ended
300 basis points
before the end of the month, and most of the unemployment was occurring in the fourth week.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we underperformed physically, but had we been thinking about the way the world was still changing so rapidly, we would have extended the survey period.
Yeah.
We would have done that, but we just didn't know that.
Sure.
So we're starting April now with an understatement of the March unemployment rate, and we're in April in the survey period on employment under the same conditions that we were in March, but now in a sense even worse, because
is it going to be atomic?
It's going to be atomic.
Because exactly now you've got a compounded problem.
Oh my gosh! It becomes even worse, because now we have no records from in-person surveys. We had a few fragmentary ones going on. We have no way of calibrating whether or not our telephone and email surveys are getting the response level that we got with in-person. What I'm saying is, I'm looking at you right now saying, "Are you unemployed?" And you'll look at me and you'll go, and I'll see that.
Right.
But I don't see that on the telephone.
Sure.
And so the quality of the responses was really bad, or could have been bad. So on May the 5th or 4th or 6th or something like that, I would give Secretary Scalia he was the labor secretary. I would give him the report, right? And I had already briefed the White House the day before, so they were totally ready. We had briefed. I briefed the Jerome Powell. The Federal Reserve was ready to release enormous liquidity because I was going to announce that 22 million people lost their jobs in April.
In 1 month.
In 1 month, 18 million were on layoff. And so the banking system had to be supported. There was all this stuff had to go on. So here's Secretary Scalia. He is not briefed the day before. He's briefed 30 minutes before release.
Yep.
Because oddly enough, the labor secretary is not on the president's economic team. I don't know how that. And
sort of loose terms.
It's a loose term. And so of course, President Trump is ready to go in front of the country and make a statement. Everything's ready to go. Secretary Scalia does not know the numbers. A brilliant lawyer, extraordinarily intellectual fellow, and father of 9 kids. So he's seen all the trouble that world brings, right? And he looks at the number, and he just looks at the number. He won't raise his head. I said, "You are the Secretary of Labor who has the worst unemployment report ever produced." And he looked at me and he says, "You are the Commissioner of Labor Statistics." The worst unemployment report.
That's good.
So
only one of us is in charge of policy.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that was the worst month, and the best month was the very next month, with 6.5 million jobs as the layoffs start. So
when you talk about Great Resignation, Great Recession, and all these things, in your mind, not as a politician but as a scientist, as an economist, do you see that as a recession? What do you see that?
So it's not a recession. A recession is the classic definition of recession is one in which you've got a policy imbalance that is is essentially knocks the economy off because of an external shock to the economy. And recessions have certain characteristics. They don't have collapses. They have a slow meltdown of the economy over many months, right? And like, for example, in the Great Recession, the recession started in December of 2007. Most people didn't notice it until April or May.
Sure.
So a collapse is something that is truly unusual. We have it in, we're most familiar with it when in world history, when we see a country attacked militarily and their economy collapses. Our economy in 1942 in March and April, in 1943 in March and April was really different than it was in November of 42.
But these are dramatic, intense events that happen as a one-time blast versus the steady decline. Which is
one way to describe it would be when John lost his hair, that was a collapse. When I went gray, that was more of a recession.
That's more of a recession.
I felt my loss was steady.
Yeah.
Have you been talking to my mother-in-law?
Yeah. So I think for people who are in the business world thinking about that period of time, from a business standpoint, you'll see that there's certain sense there. So you shut your business down. Some people were required to shut their business down, right?
Right.
And then there was a period of time when the businesses came back, but they came back as quickly as possible. And we had millions and millions and millions of people who were rehired. Right now, as of the report that was issued by BLS this past Friday, nearly every industrial group and every demographic group has recovered to the February 2020 levels.
Sure.
It's the quickest recovery from a recession ever. And so, unless you go back to 2001, which is
but that's a V, not a U.
Yeah.
It's not this. It was.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but the demand is now far outstripping that.
Oh yeah,
demand's higher,
and it has been. So I think the lessons from that period of time is I think what we learned about the statistical system was that it wasn't a bunch of just podgy old guys and gals who couldn't be agile.
Yeah.
It was extraordinary how Census, Bureau of Economic Analysis, which does the GDP reports, Ag, which does huge amounts of reports, BLS, all were able to adapt quickly.
Yeah.
And we never missed a report. It was never done. Our response rates dipped, but they didn't dip to insufficient levels. The only category that I eliminated out of the CPI, big one, was diamonds, which we didn't get enough response on, but who cares about diamonds? Right? Industrial diamonds are very important for a lot of price measurements.
This also reinforces just the innovation of our civil servants.
Yeah.
I think that's under-recognized, and this was clearly a heroic effort by this.
Well,
this
I think
team.
Also the partnerships that we developed over that 2-year period with the private sector are truly robust.
Yeah.
We needed daily information or weekly information here in Washington in order to have the right kind of policy responses. So we had a number of private companies just come to us. One big box retailers, lots of companies that you folks deal with who are in the labor market here.
Sure.
Say, here's our data. Here's our daily data. Use it. It's going to be good for a while, and then maybe in a year from now we'll talk about a contract. But just go ahead and use the data. Just don't disclose it.
Yeah.
And I took that data every other day to the Secretary Scalia. Went to the White House. We had, rapid response was what we had to do. Short cycle time. Another thing we learned was that the statistical system now has to be able to produce rapid data in short cycle time that's high quality.
Yeah.
And so we've made a lot of progress towards that end now. And so you'll see in the future the statistical system will be not only more agile but different. I think we're going to continue to do the pulse surveys out of Census, which were so well liked, and it was a great period of time, full of challenges. For a manager like myself, I loved it. It was not stressful. It was just a pure joy. But I probably shouldn't say that in front of the public.
None of your employees will be watching this. Don't worry.
It's a fascinating leadership challenge, honestly.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably a great place to stop for this episode. We can pick up this conversation here
next time.
All right, on No Suits, No Slides.